The judge did tend to indicate, though, that if the internet was classified as a utility, that the FCC would have the authority. So that's what they've done. The concern, of course, is that if it is classified as a utility, potentially that allows the FCC to tax it, to have heavier regulations. The commissioner has said they're not going to do that. His words were they're going to use a light hand. But that's not really much of a legal guarantee.
That is Bentley University professor and attorney Stephen Weissman, right here yesterday on America's Forum, expressing his concerns about what might arise if the FCC classifies the internet as a Title II utility. The Federal Communications Commission scheduled to meet here in less than 10 minutes, expected to vote on this issue today, and it's expected to pass 3-2, 3 Democrats and 2 Republicans voting along party lines. To further discuss so-called net neutrality and get our view from the Hill this morning, let's welcome in North Dakota Congressman Kevin Cramer, and of course our good friend Larry Elder is still with us from Newsmax LA. Kevin, this whole net neutrality thing, I'm just wondering, where is the act of Congress that enables the FCC to be offering its administrative rules on this?
Well, there's a great question, and I think that's the question that the courts will end up answering without a doubt as soon as the FCC acts later today. Of course, there are a couple of snowflakes coming out of the sky in Washington, which means the town's paralyzed, unlike in North Dakota. But so when this happens, there's no doubt it'll be litigated. There's no doubt in my mind that that it'll hold the show up for 2, 3, 4 years before the courts finally decide you really don't have this authority. They've already decided that twice in recent history. So the idea that the FCC is somehow going to clarify things is really unfortunate, because what Congress does have the authority to do, of course, is prescribe solutions to problems that exist by putting into statute specific prescriptions, and we're trying to do that, JD, but it further complicates the problem when you have the regulatory agency going out on its own, trying to trump what Congress is already working on in a, by the way, bipartisan fashion. And the real unfortunate thing is that for the past couple of years, the FCC under Chairman Wheeler has been collaborating with Congress on some fixes, light touch type of fixes. But suddenly the president gave a speech last November, and guess what? Tom Wheeler changed his position and said, no, we need this Title II regulation, and trust me, we aren't going to do that Dr. Weissman was talking about yesterday. I'm sorry to say I don't trust them, and I don't know why you would give them authority that they're not going to exercise anyway in terms of, like, for example, price authority or tax authority, which comes with Title II.
Congressman, my question is, what's the point? Who's complaining? What's the need? What's the problem that's being addressed by so-called net neutrality? Who benefits?
I wrote a little op-ed in the New York Times in 2009, Larry, when I was on the North Dakota Public Service Commission, and that was my question. My point was, and at that time, North Dakota had a United States Senator, Byron Dorgan, J.D., you will remember, who was sort of leading this charge in the Senate. And that was my point is, what's the problem? I represent one of the most remote places in America, center of the North American continent, very rural. And even in rural North Dakota, you have 2, 3, 4 competitive choices in terms of who your internet service provider is. From time to time, Larry, and I suppose this is where it comes from time to time there will be a complaint launched about a particular app or a particular rider on the internet, and those complaints are generally dealt with very quickly, and frankly, the market is the better regulator anyway. If you feel like something's being throttled or something's being blocked, some content is being blocked by a service provider, maybe your cable company, then you hook up with Verizon or AT&T. I mean, I don't know a better regulator in the marketplace than the consumer.
And about 3 minutes remain, gentlemen. Kevin, I'm just kind of curious. Earlier, as you were offering your comments, we saw the bespectacled visage of the FCC chairman. Well, I guess technically you're wearing specs right there in the picture we have of you, Kevin, so I don't want to confuse people. There you are right now in the center of our screen. But earlier, we saw Tom Wheeler, the FCC commissioner, and I am just flummoxed by the fact, and I guess Chairman Fred Upton of your full committee wrote him or issued a statement, but why on earth Tom Wheeler, with this independent action, refusing to come testify to your committee prior to holding this vote today, why on earth didn't Fred Upton subpoena? And here we see the chairman of the FCC. Why wasn't he subpoenaed to appear before the committee, and that way would have to answer questions?
Yeah, I think part of it was logistical, to be honest. Now, you might know, JD, we just changed the rules this year in the Energy and Commerce Committee, giving full authority to the chairman to subpoena. Otherwise, it requires a vote by the whole committee and the hearings and all that. So we actually gave that authority. However, we had a pretty collaborative relationship with the FCC leading up to just the last probably 3 weeks or so. But the interesting thing that I think people should understand about the FCC is they still don't have to even release a single aspect of the rule until they vote on it. Now, can you imagine that lack of transparency being applied to Congress or, frankly, to most other regulatory agencies, where you get to vote on the rule before anybody in the public sees it? That's just, in my mind, that's just blatantly wrong, and transparency ought to be the hallmark, not the exception.
Congressman, I think President Obama has probably spent more time in California than I have in Silicon Valley getting a bunch of money from these entrepreneurs up there. What's their take? Are they unanimous? Do they support net neutrality, or is there a division among Silicon Valley executives?
It's a great point, Larry, because therein lies some of the conflict. And I think one of the questions we should ask is the Silicon Valley entrepreneur, the guy in the garage, or whoever it is that's creating the content that goes on the internet, are they beholden to the Democrats, or are the Democrats beholden to them? And I'm worried a little bit that they feel somewhat beholden to Barack Obama and the Democrats, not really understanding that net neutrality as prescribed by the FCC will lead to less innovation and less opportunity, because it's going to lead to less investment in the robust internet that we see today. If there is one thing in the history of the country, certainly in the last couple of decades, if not couple of 100 years, is that the internet has proven to be the greatest illustration of what free enterprise and an open market can really do in terms of innovation and unleashing the entrepreneurial spirit of this country. And it gets back to your earlier question, what's wrong? What's the point? What are we trying to solve here? And I don't know how any Silicon Valley entrepreneur could say, boy, I've really been held back by this terrible internet thing, these monopolies. This is not Ma Bell of the 1930s.
You betcha. And on that note, Kevin Cramer, the only thing holding us back is time. We're out of it. We thank you, and there's more ahead.